stopped. It could be a man on watch against him simply shifting his position. Lockley froze, and then went on with even greater caution. He felt the ground before him for small twigs that might crack under his weight. The muttering continued. Presently, Lockley realized that it was a human voice. It was resonant and with many overtones, but still too faint for him to distinguish words. He crossed a slight rise that had much brushwood. The brushwood grew in clumps, and he circled them with a patient caution foreign to his feelings. The muttering changed and went on. Lockley pressed himself to the ground. Men went past him 100 feet away. He saw them in outline against the illuminated parked cars and trucks and in the space around the huge rocket. They carried no rifles, probably no firearms at all. Lockley's march up the highway had warned them of the uselessness of guns, at least at short range. They were watching for him now. Perhaps these men were relieving other watchers on the hillside. He saw other men. They seemed to move restlessly around the lighted area. The muttering was louder now. He could almost catch words. He made another 100 yards toward the rocket, and the voice changed again. Then he was dazed. The voice was speaking to him, calling him by name. "Lockley! Lockley! Don't do anything crazy! Everything can be explained! You'll recognize my voice! You talked to me on the telephone from Serena!" Lockley did recognize the voice. It was that of the General, who'd sounded pompous and indignant, as he refused to listen to Lockley's statements. Now, coming out of the many loudspeakers and echoing hollowly from Cliff's, it was the same voice, but with an intonation that was persuasive and forthright. "You startled me," the voice said crisply. "You'd found out there were humans involved in this business. It was important that the fact be suppressed. I tried to browbeat you, which was a mistake. While I was talking to you, your suspicion was reported on shortwave by the wildlife driver. I tried to overawe you. You're the wrong kind of man for that. But everything can be explained. Everything. Here's Vale to prove it." There was only an instant's pause. Then Vale's voice came out of the loudspeakers spread all about. "Lockley, this is Vale. The whole thing's faked. There's a good reason for it, but you stumbled on the facts. They had to be kept secret. I didn't even tell Jill. This isn't treason, Lockley. We aren't traitors. Come out, and I'll explain everything. Here's Sattel." And Sattel's voice boomed against the hills. "Vale's right, Lockley. I didn't know what was up. I was fooled as much as anybody. But it's all right. It's perfectly all right. When you understand, you'll realize that you had to be deceived, just as I was. Come on out, and everything will be explained to your satisfaction. I promise." Lockley grimaced. How did Sattel get up here? And the general in command of the cordon? More than that, why did they call his name instead of simply trying to kill him? Why post watchers on the hillsides, if they were anxious to explain and not to murder? How could they hope to deceive him after Jill? There was a pause, and then what was evidently considered a decisive message came. It was Jill's voice, weary and desperate. It said, "Please, come out and listen. Please come and let them explain everything. They can do it. I understand, and I believe them. It's true. It's not treason. I beg you to come out and let them tell you why all this has happened." Her voice trailed off. It trembled. It was tense. It was strained. And Lockley cursed softly, shaking with rage. Then the first voice returned. "Lockley! Lockley! Don't do anything crazy. Everything can be explained. You'll recognize my voice. You talked to me on the telephone from Serena." This voice repeated, word for word and intonation for intonation, exactly what it had said before. The other voices followed in the same order. They were taped. In Lockley's state of mind, the taping took away all authority from the voices. Jill, in particular, sounded as she might have if torture had been used to break her will and force her to say what her captors wished. She could not put any warning into it, because she could have been forced to repeat and repeat the message until her captors were satisfied. That would all be avenged now. All of it. And Jill would be grateful to Lockley even if they never saw each other again. Grateful for the monstrous blast that would wipe this place clean of living creatures. Lockley suddenly saw a way by which his vengeance could be increased by just a little. It could be made even more satisfying and just. Hiding under brushwood, while the voices tirelessly repeated their recorded persuasion, he made a very simple device. It switched onto the instrument he carried. If his hand clenched, it would go on. If his hand relaxed, it would go on. So, if he could get within 125 yards of the rocket, he could show himself and let them know what waited for them and why. With infinite patience, he got to a place almost near the circle of unarmed guards about the rocket. He waited. The guards were tense. They did not like trying to protect something with no weapons. They were jumpy. The endlessly repeated messages booming into the night frayed their nerves. They were plainly on edge. Their tenseness made the oldest trick in the world serve Lockley's purpose. He threw a stone from an especially dark shadow. It struck and bounced upon another stone, and it created a rustling of brushwood at a place distant from Lockley. And the unarmed guards plunged for that place to seize whatever or whoever had made the disturbance. They were too eager. They stumbled upon each other. And Lockley ran, and a voice cried out in terror. And then Lockley stood with his back to the rocket's lower parts, and he waved the cheese grater derisively and shouted. Then there was stillness. Only the booming voice from the speakers went on. It happened to be Satel's voice. "All right. It's perfectly all right. When you understand, you'll realize that you had to be deceived as I was. It was necessary. Come out and everything—" Somebody cut off the recorder. There was a moment of blank indecision, and then a man in uniform with 2 general stars on his shoulders came out of somewhere and walked to face Lockley. "Ah, Lockley," he said briskly. "That's the thing you smash cars and explode ammunition with, eh? Do you think it will blow the rocket?" "I'm going to try it," said Lockley. "Listen." He showed how anything that could be done to him would close the switch one way or the other. "I wanted you to know before I blow it," he said fiercely. "Where's Jill? Jill Holmes. One of your cars picked her up and brought her here. Where is she?" "We sent her," said the general, "over to the construction camp, in case you managed to get in the exact situation you're in. In other words, she's safe. She'll be coming shortly, though. She was to be notified the instant you appeared, if the rocket didn't blast as your greeting." Lockley ground his teeth. "We'll have this settled before she gets here." Vale appeared. He walked forward and stood beside the general. "We did a job that was several times too good, Lockley," he said ruefully. "I'd rehearsed my song and dance until we thought it was perfect. What made you suspicious, Lockley? Did you notice we kept the communicator aimed right so you'd hear through to the end? A fine point, that. We worried about it." The headlights of a car moved against a mountainside. "You see," said Vale, "the thing had to be done this way. Satel swore a blue streak when it was explained to him. He felt he'd been made a fool of. But there are some things that can't be handled forthrightly." Lockley felt physically ill. Jill had been, still was, engaged to Vale. She'd been anxious about him. She'd been loyal to him. And he was helping the invaders.